Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for Creative Corner. We're talking the future of live music. It is going to make a comeback inevitably, but I think now is a good time to talk about what that process is going to look like. And I figured I'd bring a good friend of mine here, someone who's also working on the front lines of this in the form of JJ Cassiere. So please, with your muted claps, welcome JJ Cassiere to the conversation, everyone.
Thank
JJ,
you.
for those who aren't familiar with you, a quick background, please, on how you got to where you are now. Just the cliff notes, please. Agencies, artists, etc. Go for it.
Cliff Notes, originally from South Florida, started as a promoter and a tour manager, and then led my way into the agency world. Worked at companies such as the Agency Group, Circle Talent Agency, TKO, with Matt Galley over at Ellis Industries, and now my own company called 33 and West.
Mm-hmm. And tell us quickly about 33 and West, some of the artists and talents, because it's not just music, obviously, just some of the talent that you guys work with.
Yeah, it's a full scope, full spectrum talent agency. Music, TV, film, podcast, digital influencers, comedy, pretty much any and all talent you can think about, we represent.
Mm-hmm. And just quickly, since the subject is live music, can you just talk to us quickly about what attracted you to live music, some of your highlights working in the live music sector before we talk about, what happened in 2020 to it?
Well, I would say definitely a highlight was, last year working on the DMX 20 anniversary tour. His first album is Dark and Hell is Hot. That was a great tour. And, 20 years ago, I bought that album when I was living in Fort Lauderdale. And, as a young kid, what is this? This album's insane. And 20 years later, had the opportunity to book that tour and work with X and his team. So that was definitely a highlight, which was last year. And, developing my own sense of, being an agent and, dipping into different genres and working with podcasts and, digital influencers like Danny Duncan, who, is kind of the face of Zoomies right now with his Virginity Rocks brand, helping curate and put together his tour, which is, sells out pretty much everywhere around the country. So it's been nice to, up until what's happening right now, I've been very fortunate to be able to diverse, the talent that I work with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's just get to it. Let's just get right to it. I want to actually tell us, what was it like to be at an agency around March when, all the information was kind of coming out and there's a lot of uncertainty. I know you guys had to adjust and react. You had tours booked for the year, obviously. Just walk us through the office. Like, what was the vibe like when COVID was starting to kind of really be a thing?
Yeah, I think it was March 14th. It was that Thursday. I forget exactly what Thursday it was, but we had Dance Gavin Dance at the Hollywood Palladium in LA, sold out that night. And I remember, the manager, Derek Brewer, and Matt Pike, my other business partner, they were at the show. The band was loaded in to sound check and pretty much ready for the first day of the tour when, Live Nation was like, hey, this can't happen. We can't have 4,000 people roll into this venue. And that's when it really hit. And I think that's also when South by went down. And I remember us at the office being like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So,
of course.
Yeah.
And how did the artists feel? What were the talent feeling? Were they looking to you of like, book us, we still need to make money? What was the vibe for talent?
Yeah, we had to move back another one of our tours called Vengeance, which has Xavier Wolf on it, Attila, Volumes, and a bunch of other awesome artists. That was starting in a couple weeks, and these artists were calling me, hey, what's going on? I'm just like, hey, I really don't understand what's really going on to the fullest extent, but right now we're gonna hold tight until we learn more. And yeah, everyone, we also had bands on the road. We had Spite, a young band named Spite that I represent. They were on the road out there, calling me, being like, hey, what's going on here? We're about to load into our show in Chicago. And, I think they played one or two more shows during all this in the beginning stages. And then eventually they went home. They had to go home and didn't want to play any more shows and decided to, be safe and go home. And so, we had bands on the road that were, that were confused, but came home. We had bands about to go, artists about to go on the road asking what's going on and, kind of waiting to see what happens with other tours and other venues. And as everything was kind of shutting down, we shut down with it. And then we decided to, we thought moving our tours to August, September, 6-7 months ahead, we were going to be okay. But here we are in, September.
Yeah.
And we moved every single tour to later on next year.
Yeah, before we get to that, talk a bit about about what your artists did to diversify. Because would it be safe to say that the bulk of most of your clients' income is touring, is live music?
Yeah, I would say yes. I would say majority of their income, most of our clients is live events, touring. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And how do they adjust in terms of their normal activities? I know a lot of them kept putting music out. I know, a lot of them are doing live streams. Just talk about some of the adjustments some of them made.
Yeah, there's the live, there's the streaming, there's the drive-through shows that are popping up, which are
talk about those real quick. Talk about those.
Well, those are, for a particular artist, because those expenses for those drive-through shows are not cheap. For promoters to go in and do these drive-through shows, the expenses are very high. So you need an artist that can warrant a higher ticket to sell to cover expenses and make some profit. For a young developing band, the drive-through shows, at least in my eyes, don't really work because, you can't sell $15, $20 tickets and have a full-on drive-through show with security and insurance and all the expenses and cover. So I think a lot of artists have, reverted to Twitch, reverted to, gaming and live streaming and kind of building their Twitch up, escape the fate. A client of mine, Craig and Robert have done a great job with building their Twitch community, and their fans have supported them, and their fans have got behind them to put together that monthly feed to support these guys. And
were they brand new to Twitch, or they never used it before until this?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I don't think they ever were really twitching. Yeah. Maybe a little bit, but nothing to the extent of this. And they're killing it. They're doing, they're enjoying it, and it's helping them make ends meet and just getting through this, because we will get through this. It's just a matter of when. So
yeah, of course. So with the drive-through component, that's kind of like, really going against the grain and pushing forward by any means necessary. Then you're seeing the live stream with Twitch happening now. But how's this affected anyone just overall release schedules, content schedules? The whole point, obviously, especially for your business, is put out content, put out albums, put out singles to support the shows, the tours, to draw people to the venues. But do you think some artists are kind of looking at it like, what's the point? Or do you see some people holding back albums and EPs, or are they just pushing ahead?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of artists that wanted to put out music and albums and didn't feel it was the right timing due to what was happening in the world. But now I think you're seeing more artists feeling more comfortable putting out music, and this is a great way for artists to, be able to hone in on their craft and hone in on their music and, their content, or fix their website, or fix this and tweak this. There's more time now to really step back and have a good chance to kind of gut everything a little bit and make things better.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of artists. Friends that I know as well, especially in electronic music. They're forced to stay at home, but they love the life on the road and it's fun and whatnot. But now a lot of them are reporting to be more creative than ever. They're forced in their studios and they're forced to make music. And you're still seeing them have this kind of rapid fire release, but the destination doesn't seem to be the venue as much as it is live streams. And things of that nature. So just give us a lay of the land. It's September 3rd. We assumed by now, March, things would have some sense of normalcy. Just give us a status update. Like, what's it looking like right now?
I can only talk from my experience. I'm not,
of course,
not a biologist or a doctor or whatever out there, So all I can say is it really comes down to what city and what state really comes down to that. Of course, I had a show in Dayton, Ohio and Indianapolis 2 weeks ago with an artist from Chicago, to do a quick little weekend, little warrior run to make some money. And, it worked out. There's certain mandates that the venues and promoters have to follow with half capacity,
Mm-hmm.
wearing a mask, having, sanitation stations, and practicing social distancing. So it all comes down to really where you live in the country. That's just my personal opinion. California and New York are going to open up differently than Indiana, Ohio, and North Dakota. So I think it's just a matter of figuring out kind of which artists are open to playing concerts, because some aren't, some don't feel comfortable, and some feel comfortable and are itching to play and want to make money, and they want to see their fans be happy and them too. So, but at the same time, just making sure everyone's doing it the right way and being safe. So it comes down to the artist. It comes down to, what city, what state we're talking about. But does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. What have you heard back from those shows? I mean, did the bands report that like, oh man, it was a great show, or like, it's not the same? What are they reporting back?
Yeah, the artist, I spoke to him afterwards, and he felt safe. He felt great to be on stage again. The venue capacity was normally 500, but they cut it down to 250. So there's plenty of space for people to practice social distancing. Not 100% sure if everyone was practicing social distancing, to be honest, because this artist was it's very, high energy hip hop, so it's very hard to just kind of sit still and watch a concert. But he said the vibe was great. He said people were, enjoying themselves. They were doing, kind of doing their thing. And he had a blast. He wants to play more shows, and he has children, and he at the end of the day was like, hey, I felt really comfortable. And now being an independent artist, because he has no record label backing him, he made some scratch, and now he can go home and provide and keep it going.
Mariah wants to know, what did he say about the vibe of the crowd? Were they able to just get lost in the music and get into it?
Yeah, I asked him how was the energy of the fans, and he was like, they were going off. They were singing words. There was
so stoked just to be there.
There was 250 people, and the show sold out. And which at 250, the energy was still there. Because I was kind of worried, like, hey, is this going to be like weird? And again, maybe Cincinnati or Dayton, Ohio is a lot different than Los Angeles and New York. It's different people, different thoughts on what they feel, how everything is going on, and they went off.
Mm-hmm. Are people actually like, promoters, agents, bands, are they looking at these states that are opening first and being like, book me there? What do you think? What's going on there?
Well, yeah, there's like an organization out there that's, a band of independent promoters. And they, come together to kind of spread this list that's going around to a lot of the agents, that what venues and what their mandates are and which ones are technically open and what their rules are. So there is a lot of communication between the promoters and the agencies on kind of what's opened and what's the capacity and kind of what the mandates are. So the promoters, have been super on top of it, because, we're all in this together. We need the promoters to survive and the venues to survive, as well as they need the agents to survive. And we're all in this together to, make ends meet and get through this.
Yeah, Mariah just asked the question on all of our mind. Is that a public list, or is that something amongst the industry?
No, I don't know if it's a public list or not. It's a good question. I wouldn't be the one to answer that because I'm not part of that organization that's distributing it. But I think it could. I could ask, but to answer that question, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So curious now, as an agency, who's calling the shots right now? Who are you waiting for directives and orders? Is it Gavin Newsom of California? Is it another governing body? Is it Live Nation? Like, who are you looking to of like when you can really get back to what you guys do?
No, I think it's the local government. That's what it comes down to. That's from what I can tell. But clearly in Dayton and Indianapolis, the local government's allowing it to do certain shows at certain capacity, and then the promoters has the choice or has the option to do it or not. So it comes down to the local government. That's how I see it. If the local governments allow the venues to open up and do certain shows at certain capacity, I would think a lot of venues would be open, or at least trying to, I think a lot of venues, some venues are, trying to do set up like an outdoor
Yeah.
vibe for shows. And I think that, helps them be able to do business outside and spread people out. Like a lot of comedy shows are kind of starting to go outside because they're seated anyways, but yeah, I think it comes down to the local government. It really does.
And so just tell us about the lifeblood of venues right now. I mean, are venues shutting down across the country the way restaurants are? I mean, what's going on with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a list of what venues are shutting down.
Sure.
I mean, I know Slim's shut down, but I think that was kind of prior to what was going on. But I remember
There's always been rumors that place is shutting down for a long time.
Yeah. So there's not really a ton of venues off the top of my head that I can pick apart that have shut down. At least the ones in the promoters I'm talking to, which is a lot, are still open.
Wow.
So,
that's good to know. I mean, just kind of equating it back to that restaurant analogy. I mean, especially living in LA, I'm on a thread with some friends where every week we're like, and another one shuts down, and another one shuts down. But with venues, I mean, how are they finding ways to keep the lights on if they can't really, adjust in that case?
Well, I mean, it's the PPP and the government loans that they're applying for.
Yeah.
Those loans are, pretty much everything and anything they can get to put towards to keep the lights on. I just don't know if those loans can get a venue a year out, a year padding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of that loan is kind of for like businesses that are, down for 2 or 3 months, but for live entertainment that's down for at least a year, it seems like, those funds will run out and the government needs to step in, to keep those venues alive. And yeah.
Mariah just asked another question here that was kind of going to transition to as well. When things do open back up nationally, or at least in our country here as well, what will there be like a gold rush of some kinds? Will people be flooding back to the venues? I mean, how do you anticipate what that's going to look like?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a handful of people that are not wanting to go out, but there is a lot of people that want to go out and want to see live entertainment. So do I think live entertainment's going to be dead? No, absolutely not. It's on pause. That's kind of how I look at it. Because prior to this, I mean, we were thriving. People were going to concerts, artists were selling a ton of tickets and merchandise. It was great. 2020, I felt, and other peers of mine felt, was a really good year. So yeah, I think we're going to come back stronger than ever, to be honest. And I think there's a ton of people out there that want to come out and support their favorite artist and support their favorite venue and, and keep this going, Yeah, there will be some people that are going to kind of wait probably more and let the rush go first because they might be apprehensive, but that's cool. But there's going to be a lot of people that are like, yo, I'm ready.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. And more so to that point, I mean, even before the pandemic went down, a common complaint I was having and experiencing was, with live music, especially in a city like LA, there's just on a given night, there are so many dope artists to see. But a lot of the competition, I think, isn't really with other artists per se. It's just staying home, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, HBO, all the great TV that's out now. I think a lot of people, it's hard for them to be like, let's see, on a Thursday night, go out, parking, get a drink, blah, blah, blah. But I think now, people are like, all right, enough Netflix, enough. Like, I am just dying to get back out there. And as an optimist, frankly, for music and culture and entertainment, I think we're going to see another level of appreciation, perhaps, for live events and live music, not just for the artists themselves, but like community. I mean, half the fun of going to a show is looking around and being like, wow, a lot of people like me over here. Like, just kind of have that sense of community. Do you feel that same kind of sentiment?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, listen, I was going to shows sometimes 3 or 4 shows, 5 shows a week. And, I would catch myself being like, I got another show to go to, But now I'll never, ever feel that. I mean, of course, I love going to concerts. I love what I do for a living. But, sometimes you get run down. And you're like, I got another show to go to. But now it's just like, it's at a point where I'll never probably say that or ever think that just because I miss it so much. And it's really, I think, made myself and a lot of people that work, touring and live events really humble and really appreciative of that life.
No, totally agreed. So with that being said, let's just kind of bring it back to the emerging artist market real quick. What are some things you can recommend artists can be doing right now to position themselves for when we do reopen? I know we talked about live streaming, but I can't tell you guys how many times I'm emailed with another live streaming platform that wants to launch. I mean, like everyone's trying to kind of capitalize on this now. JJ, I'm sure you've seen the same thing. Everyone's trying to kind of get in that game right now. But of course, the question is like, how does this really benefit an artist's career aside from, getting some more attention from their existing fan base? But that being said, JJ, I mean, maybe you can kind of talk about what artists, should have been doing before the pandemic, and that they should still be doing now, but maybe just more recent adjustments. If they want to get on the radar of a 33 and West, of a JJ Cassiere, if they want to start getting ahead of what the live market might look like, even on a local level as opposed to a national level, what are some things developing artists should be doing to position themselves?
Well, I think it comes down to the music. I know it sounds generic and corny, but it really comes down to the music, and this is a perfect time to really hone in on, your art and the message and structure and everything regarding music. Instead of, a lot of artists are running around playing shows and get caught up in writing new material and really honing in on their craft. This is a perfect time to do that. So that's one thing, the live streaming stuff, I'm 50-50 on them. I know it helps, artists, with income, but there's so many you can do. There's so many times I think a fan can be like, I've seen this, this is cool, great, but like the band's done this 4 times, like I'm 3 times, so, and it could be, even like when you do the live streams, it could be, instead of doing it in our garage, let's try to figure out a different, ambiance or something, spice it up, So yeah, I would hone in on, of course, the craft. And keep in mind, every industry person's at home, right? So understand that when you email a JJ Cassiere or you email someone in the business, I feel like you might have a better chance of getting a hold of them now because they're all at home with their kids sitting down, watching Netflix or watching the NBA playoffs, and they're like, oh, I'll answer this email. Why not? So this might be actually better time to try to get a hold of people in the industry because they're all kind of at home.
On that note, I know you and I have talked about this, and I've talked about it with ArtistPro students before as well. JJ, what's your take? What's your perspective? What's the best way to track down an industry professional, reach out to them in a graceful, not annoying way, and actually solicit a response? What's your preferred way to receive an unsolicited contact?
Yeah, when I was younger, I was a punisher. I'm not going to lie. I would try to get a hold of someone through MySpace or however I could, it was different back then. I didn't have email really back then when I was starting out. So I'm not going to lie. I would go to shows and try to, pinpoint like who this person looks like and just walk up to them as best as possible and introduce myself, which now I'm not sure. It depends on who the person is at the end of the day, if they really want to do that or not. But especially now it's, what really helps is getting a recommendation. If there's a local promoter or a manager or someone that's in the business that and you trust, I think that goes a long way with, hey, there's this agent, JJ or Matt Pike or Dan Rosenblum, I really want to get an introduction to them. I don't really know them. Do you have a relationship? I think getting a referral from someone speaks
massive.
It's massive, so, and, some people might not have that, but, that's a big part of diving into your local community and like even the local promoter, in your city, or, he or she is probably doing some sort of business with some agencies out there, and if they are, I think it's just a matter of asking them, hey, when the time is right and you feel your music or, maybe that contact you have, feel it's right to approach someone, then go at it, So the recommendation part is a big one, like I try to answer as many incoming emails as possible. It's tough sometimes, but at least I know I was that person at one time, and
sure.
I cold emailed people, and there's certain people to this day I still work with or still know that answered my emails 15 years ago, Andy Summers or Chris Zitterbard. These people, just answered me back, and I'll never forget those. I still do business with them to this day. So once you get through it, it feels good. It really is. It's just a matter of, it's about timing. You got to understand, I feel like the newer generation, and not knocking it, has a problem with, everything happens like this. It has to happen like this. This takes time. It really does take time, and it's about timing. I know it sounds kind of, how do you explain that? I don't know how to explain that. It's just the timing of the music gods or whatever you believe in, you have your moment and you have your way in. It's just, and that's almost with any industry. And I wouldn't say just entertainment. It's just, especially with entertainment, it takes a lot of time and just energy and just patience. I mean, I was a young agent at the agency group thinking my shit was hot, and I was like, yeah. And my mentors were like, hey, you gotta you gotta slow down a little bit. This takes time. And now I'm 35 and I was 25 then. Now I'm like, yeah, I totally get it. I didn't really know much really about myself or the industry. And I now know 10 years later, I know so much more.
Yeah, not to mention alone just the power of the ask. I mean, don't abuse the power of the ask. But guys, I can't just stress this enough. Just don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to just go out on a limb a little bit. And if someone says no, that's fine. Eventually, someone will come around that's willing to put themselves, in front of you to represent you because you have a good relationship with them. They can trust you, etc. But just don't be afraid to ask. Your contact base is wider than you might think.
Well, you never know if you don't try, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm at a point now where, I'm going to ask something. I'm going to ask, within reason, and of course read the room. But at a certain point, it's okay to, there's a staple sometimes that people have of, if I don't know something in the entertainment industry, it's okay to admit you don't understand or know something. You don't have to feel like you need to know all the answers. Totally. That's why I have partners and, relationships with people to learn off of. If you're not constantly learning every day, you're doing something wrong. I don't care if you're Jimmy Iovine or you're little JJ Cassiere. You should always be trying to learn about yourself and or the business each and every day. And that means ask a question that you feel you really need to know the answer, and you trust someone to ask this question, then do it.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of asking questions, guys, we're at the halfway mark, a little over actually, because JJ has a hard out at 11:55 our time. Again, if you have specific questions, maybe not just about specifically the future of live music, but anything when it comes to booking, getting gigs, etc., now is the time to do it. Go in the chat section, put them in there. Mariah's been slaying it, but I want to hear from some other voices. And if you're watching on Facebook, if you want to get in this chat, just go to theartistpro.com to register there as well. That being said, JJ, let's just really quickly talk data analytics. Dispel some myths for us, please. What do you actually care about and look at when it comes to analytics and data? Is it really followers? Is it engagement? Is it Spotify stream? I know it's probably a combination of all of them, but what really matters from a live music perspective as to why you might be interested in an unknown talent, but potentially rising talent?
Yeah. And I mean, listen, like I said before, it comes down to the music. It really does. That's first and foremost, past that, it's almost even more appealing nowadays if an artist is unsigned and doesn't have a full team or a full structure, because I can nurture and use my resources to help the artist, with a manager or business manager or even a record label. So I wouldn't, get caught up on, how big I am as an artist. If you're making really dope music, then it should speak for itself. But when it comes past that, I'm more about the engagement. You might not, like Danny Duncan's a prime example. He might not have 13 million followers on Instagram or 13 million on YouTube. His engagement is so high, and the comments, that's what I really look for. That speaks volumes. Then, because sometimes it's all a little bit convoluted. And Danny Duncan, there he is. Yeah, he's a wild man, dude. Oh, he's crazy, but I love him. But you're
right. Look, 4,000, 4,400, 5,000 comments, 5,400 comments. I mean, yeah, I would definitely go with that. Yeah, but he definitely has a personality.
Yeah, so he's a prime example of But yeah, he's a prime example of what I was talking about. I come across artists that have, they might have all these, monthly streams on Spotify, but they have 100 followers. And to me, it's, there's something good with that, but it's also like, hey, how many actual fans are really does artists have that's following them, compared to their monthly streams. So I don't necessarily look at always the monthly streams. It's all about the followers as well too. So I think it's a combination, but for me, it's about the engagement. Someone can have 5,000 followers as artists who's up and coming, but there's a ton of comments in there, and it's not all bots, and it's not all the artists responding to the fans.
Yeah, exactly. So you're more savvy on this. Once upon a time, everyone thought like they can kind of manipulate these numbers, but no, I mean, like, agents are savvy on these things, guys. When you buy fake fans and bots, like, they see this, they know this. It's obvious more than ever.
But I do, I definitely do. So it's just, you can have 3,000 comments on a picture, but 1,500 or 2,000 are, the artist responding to the fans, which, that's cool, but that's not real organic 3,000 comments of people commenting. So, there's little nooks and crannies of it,
Yeah. And what JJ just described there, I'm actually experiencing it myself now as a new artist, is the dry stream paradox. The idea that we get lots of streams, but like how many fans would ever show up to a show? I mean, JJ, just before we went live, I was showing you my streams. I'm averaging 700,000 streams a month on Spotify. But if you look at my followers, they're not quite there because I'm just getting a lot of playlist love. But well, that's about it.
Well, that's not bad though. It's not a bad thing because you're an independent artist getting love from playlists. So that's half the battle that a lot of artists wish they would get. So at least you're getting that. But now it's important to try to convert yourself and this music into fans that really follow you.
Yeah, that's the challenge. Tyler, you had a question in the chat here. I want to actually unmute you real quick and have you ask it to JJ directly. I'm going to unmute you. And have you ask it to JJ. Tyler, this is JJ. JJ, this is Tyler.
Hey, Tyler.
Hey, what's up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yep.
All right, cool. Yeah, so I think there's a big debate in new artists in should you do little local like 20, 50, 100 person shows just to like get your name out there and get a resume of shows that you've done? Or should you hunker down and focus on your music, focus on your brand, and develop yourself online and kind of let the bigger shows come to you in a way? And specifically thinking about how the whole live show industry is going to change when things come back in, I'm wondering your thoughts on that.
I think artists should always be playing shows. I don't think, I think simultaneously the artist has to wear multiple hats if they don't have a manager or an agent. If you're an unsigned local artist, you should be doing multiple. You should be, of course, it'd be nice to have someone in the band that kind of handles this and someone in the band that handles this. If it's one person that's kind of handling everything, yeah, it could be challenging, but at the same time, playing, getting familiar and building the relationship with the local promoter is important, because when I'm doing shows with, Chris Trebees or whoever, Erica down in San Antonio, she'll want to put local artists on there, and I'll ask her, which ones, and she says this local artist is like the one on Champion, and it's a prime example of like Upon a Burning Body in San Antonio. Now when I was representing them, they were just a local artist in San Antonio, and they were developing and they were drawing tickets and they wrote really, really dope music. And next thing you know, they got an agent. I signed them to Sumerian, and the rest is history. They became a real national touring worldwide band. So to answer your question, yeah, I do think artists should be playing local shows. At the same time, honing in on your music and honing in on video content. 'Cause I do think music videos, like for a minute there, I feel like people didn't think music videos were cool, but now music videos are everything. Video content is number one. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally.
JJ, I got a follow-up one for you, though. Can you speak really quickly about not oversaturating your own market, like not playing too often at home? Can you just speak to that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, in the earlier stages, a lot of artists are trying to get on shows and they just get a chance. But I think once it becomes apparent that, we're the hometown heroes and we're drawing tickets and we're adding, value. Yeah, at that point, it is okay to be a little more particular on what shows you want to play that are on your home turf, or when to headline instead of opening the big national show that you've done multiple times. plan out, hey, this is, we're ready to headline, and maybe we connect it with our album and do big album release show and document it and have a couple cameras and edit it right. And, so we have some really cool, video footage to, you can have a sold out show, which is great. But nowadays, if you don't have maybe some video to show it, it's not saying you didn't do it, but it's hard to warrant or that person have a vision on how crazy the show was. I mean, you can document this hometown show and then people are moshing and, head walking, and it's just chaos. And if you can document that and use that as a tool to show anyone, that's huge.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a perfect transition to Mr. James Gutman coming all the way from Amsterdam.
Hey.
I like your question here in the chat. James, this is JJ. JJ, this is James. Go ahead and ask your question, James.
Yo, what's up, JJ? Thanks a ton for doing this, man. I mean, my question is sort of built on what Tyler just asked too. I've sort of been struggling with the same thing. Like I played, especially when I was living in San Francisco, I felt like I just played it to death. Like I was sort of the guy that was getting put on by the local promoter for like opening every show that was coming through and all of that. And I started feeling like it was super fun, but like it wasn't doing anything for me. Like it was, I don't know. So I sort of slowed it down and started focusing more on just producing music and building the metrics and stuff like that. But I always kind of wondered, because I've been trying to get an agent for a while, and I'm sort of figuring out what are you really looking for particularly? So
yeah, I again, come down to the music, right? If you send me music, I'm just not feeling it. It's my opinion, and I'm just not vibing it. And not saying, an artist can send me music and I can see potential, right? But there has to be some sort of engagement musically for me. If it's heavy metal, hardcore, whatever it is, I have to feel something, right? That's what music does to people, So yeah, I mean, if you went through that with, you went through the grind with the local promoters, which it is a grind, it's okay to step back and be like, you know what? Like I played shows. I know I've played shows, and I can always become better live, but I know what I'm kind of doing live. Yeah. Take a step back and maybe focus just on your music and building the metrics. So then when the time comes, you want to come back out, you've already played live already before, and now your metrics are a little more sexy. So that could it could be a different dynamic or a different variable for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Thanks a ton, man. Appreciate your answer.
Yeah, for sure.
I got a follow-up for you, JJ. I have a lot of producers in the room, and I work with a lot of producers anyway, but sometimes bedroom or studio producers don't always translate to amazing live artists. Of course, for you, it's different. You're with bands a lot of the time, and if you're in the band, you have instruments. There's something to behold, right? I want to see that in person. Tips, suggestions, if you are a producer-oriented artist, as to way to translate that to the stage, making a stage performance out of studio production as your primary craft. Any insights on that?
Well, listen, I was never in a band, or I never could play anything. So when it comes down to putting what plug into what and what string here and what cable here, I wouldn't be the guy to talk to about that. I'm not going to lie, But yeah, there are a ton of artists out there that are more, starting as, kind of like you, Shem, kind of starting kind of as a studio-esque, artist based around the internet, So, it's a hard question to ask. It depends on what the artist, who they are, and what it is. But my personal opinion would be, maybe start small, then work your way up. Don't think your first show you have the violin and the whole bells and whistles.
Sure.
Maybe start smaller and build from there. So it's like a little bit more easier, and don't fester so much about your first show and has to be perfect and this and that and the keys and the backup singers or whatever. It might be best to kind of do a more smaller, dumbed down version and then build from that.
Tomas, you're in the room. I'd love to kind of get your perspective on that, actually, when it comes to, maybe a little bit more on the technical side, just a little bit about ways you can take the studio and take it to the stage.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. What's up, JJ?
Oh, man.
That's something I use Ableton Push, and so just part of my own process is just using it in the studio when I'm writing music. and then trying to figure out ways to incorporate it. When I perform, it's mostly just been CDJs, just DJing. But I have done stuff with I have a band with my brother, and then we do the whole Ableton thing and just try to like have fun with it. I do some performances, like some live performances on Instagram. So this is kind of an example of that.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's the Instagram performances were more for like I just was hearing over and over again. Yeah, you like for Instagram or for YouTube, you want to perform live, but I was mainly just making beats, you know, like clicking on the mouse and putting in drum patterns.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, like how do I get more engagement? You know, how can I make something that's like a little bit more entertaining? So that was kind of my attempt at taking my production and turning it into a live performance. But yeah, I mean, this was like within this last year, kind of doing more of that. And so when shows come back around, I'm definitely going to try to possibly incorporate some of that.
Well, it could be like, you know, getting a practice space outside of your studio and doing it by yourself first, you know? But yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely CDJs, Ableton, you know, those are, I'm definitely fully aware of those. I think it's a matter of, do you take your sound, is there like a guitar or like a live component to it instead of electronic? Do you implement some live elements, like live instruments?
Yeah,
you know?
and it depends for everyone, right? I mean, like for some people, CDJs is actually all you need because the energy of the room is enough to behold. Like that dance floor is enough for some people. Some artists, you know, they might have a more instrumentalist approach to it where I want to see you do that thing on stage. You know, so everything else depends on the artist. Mariah, you had a question about traveling artist ideas. Pick me. I'm going to pick you. I'm going to have to unmute you here. Wait, I think you have to unmute you. I can't. Oh, there you are. Say something.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. What's up? Mariah, this is JJ. JJ's Mariah.
Yo, what's up, man?
Hi, what's up?
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, of course.
Where are you at? Where do you...
Right now, I'm in Dillon Beach, California. That's where I'm at. Normally, I live in Los Angeles, but I'm here for my girlfriend's brother's small wedding up in Dillon Beach, California. I'm currently outside right now.
Yeah, so my question was, I've been, my approach during this whole year and really was like fan base, like really, really like trying to gain a fan base and like get people to dig me as a brand. And then, you know, also just like produce great music to back it up once they are like a super fan. And so I've kind of been thinking about this like weird, have you ever been to like a traveling artist event?
Traveling artist event.
Sorry, that's like stupid. Like if a friend's like, hey, there's a traveling artist coming into town and they host them like in their backyard or like a cool little, like not a venue, but more of like a wholesome, like homey kind of thing where it's like word of mouth and like all of their friends. And it's a lot of like new like listeners and viewers. Have you ever
been to one or two of those in LA where like it's kind of someone's house and there's candles and food and
isn't it like So Far Sounds? Didn't they start doing that kind of stuff?
Yeah, they do stuff like that.
Okay. All right, go on.
Okay. Well, I was just going to see like what your experience was, if you had any experience with those or like any artists that had experience with those, because I've been thinking about doing like essentially a living room tour or like a backyard tour because I have really honed in on my fan base. So I've been kind of thinking about doing that. And I've been to 2 traveling artist events that were really incredible. And I had no idea, like I didn't know anything about the artist and I became a fan after it because you get kind of that like really intimate experience with them. So I was just kind of seeing what your thoughts are on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I haven't really been to many of those. I mean, I've been to a couple. When I first moved to California, there were, I don't remember the names of them, but I remember, you know, a couple friends of mine would hold these intimate kind of singer-songwriter-esque shows kind of in the living room with, you know, with pillows and, you know, rugs and couches. And, you know, it was cool, you know, but I don't have much experience, you know, personally or professionally going to many of those. You know, I mean, back in the day, of course, you know, tour managing a lot of these, you know, the hardcore metal bands, we would play some backyard shows and some house shows. And and it would be insane. But that was, that was kind of like a word of mouth kind of, with a promoter. You after the show, you played at the venue, then you went to someone's house and stayed there. Then you just played another show, and it was just chaos. So what you're talking about, I don't have much experience in it. I mean, or going to, I just be frank, me, it's more going, of course, to Hotel Cafe or some of these, school nights, some of these more organized, not saying what you're saying is not organized, but more like, hard ticket or even soft ticket kind of more venue, theater shows, but yeah, I don't have a plethora like of contacts or people that I know that do what you're talking about, to be honest. But I know it's out there. It's just, it's very niche, Does
anyone know any other kind of things like that, by the way? JJ, that was going to be a follow-up question I had for you, was like more non-traditional ways to start getting on stage as opposed to kind of getting on a traditional venue. Mariah, you mentioned one of those. Actually, Mariah, while you're here, can you mention like what are those organizations? Like what are ones that people can start looking out for that can get in contact with for some of these once we can reopen?
Really was just going to plan like my own living room tour.
Well,
All right, there it is.
I think if you build a fan base and you like some of these influencers, let's say they do these meetups, and they meet up at a park or they meet up somewhere and it's, 10 people or 1,000 people come out, you can do rogue stuff like that, and, I don't know. I mean, you have to have a relationship with people at their houses and do it, It's simply calling friends and kind of creating your own tour and going from city to city and like seeing if you can throw events or a show at your friends' houses. But yeah, there is, a lot of kind of rogue stuff going on where, meetups are random place to meet up with your fans to have shows and then kind of record it and capture it. Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of that. I just don't know if there's like a company that kind of specializes in it. I think it's more of like the artist kind of just doing it somewhere where they think they can pull it off.
Yeah, totally. I was just thinking like, especially just kind of coming off the tail of all of this, it's kind of like, I mean, for me, it's very on brand to have like an intimate type of, I don't know, venue or like show, but I'm just thinking like people are really seeking that interaction and like intimacy right now. So for me,
and also small groups.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, I don't know. It was just a thought.
No, I mean, you can, anything's possible. You can go rogue and start, to create whatever you want to create and see how it works.
On that note, JJ, as we wind down, because we'll have you for a couple more minutes, can you just talk about like what sort of things like that would raise your eyebrow as someone who wants to do business with an artist like that? I mean, on one hand, there's the artist that makes great music that you talked about that you can get on stage, but then is there another kind of artist that you look at? Like, okay, yeah, they make good music, but look how entrepreneurial they are. They started their own events brand. They started their own traveling living room concert series. I mean, do those things capture your eye, or is it strictly just about that music?
No, I think it's and of course the total package is great. If the more the artist is more self-efficient, that helps, because, sometimes the artists don't have a manager. And when I come in, I'm the agent and there's no manager. And a lot of times agents have to do manager duties. So it's nice when, the artist has their shit together, to be honest, and can figure out, things on their own or be creative. And some artists are just, I don't know what to do, that's cool. But there's some artists that are like, yeah, I have a vision. And I just, can you give me your opinion on the vision or help me, expedite this vision. Right. So yeah, I think, we have a ton of artists that are very hands-on and it's nice, and sometimes it's not, sometimes it's like, hey, just, it comes with trust, and I think after a while when an artist has trust within their team, they kind of let go a little bit more than others,
Absolutely. And for some, it's harder for them to even begin to let go, unfortunately. That being said, JJ, before you get out of here, can you please let everyone know how they can keep in touch with you? He's been a great resource. In fact, before you do that, quick round of applause for JJ. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Cassiere. JJ, if someone wants to reach out to you, stay in touch with you, follow you, give us the whole Instagram, email, if you want to do that, whatever, just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, my email is just jj@33andwest.com. And yes, 33 and West, the number 33 is solely based on Larry Bird's number. So go Celtics today against Toronto. And my Instagram is just my name @JJ Cassiere. And yeah, send me an email. And if I I don't again, if I don't respond to you within 24 hours, just hang in there. It's it's just takes a minute sometimes, but yeah, I would love to answer anyone's questions and keep in touch with anyone. I'm very transparent, so I'll tell you how I feel and how I think, just my opinion on music or whatever it may be. I'm not saying I'm right or I'm wrong. I'm just giving you my opinion.
Again, JJ, thank you so much for joining us, and everyone here, thank you guys for doing it as well. If you're watching on Facebook, thank you again for joining and watching the live stream. If you missed any of this, it will be available on all podcast platforms and the YouTube channel, hopefully sometime in the early next week. In the meantime, you guys, thank you so much. Stay safe, keep making music, and stay tuned for another Creative Corner in 2 weeks. JJ, again, thank you. And for everyone else, stay safe, and I'll catch you guys later.